This is a reference annotation sample for annotating COVID CT lesions on a CT lung. So first we load the data. So you do that by clicking on data and choose files to add. From here we select which file to add and then click on open. The description needs to be volume and you click on OK and it will load the particular file into the memory. So now we need to first change the window settings. So you click on this drop down menu over here, modules, and you click on volumes. So inside volume you need to select the volume which we just loaded, and then you need to click on the lung window. So this automatically applies the default lung window settings, and if you want to modify it further you can adjust the window width and window length over here. So once this is done, you need to go to again this drop down menu. So this drop down consists of all the modules which are there in 3D slicer. So we need to choose segment editor over here to add the segments which we want to annotate. So in this case for COVID CT we are annotating two segments. The first segment is the lung, which excludes the lesion, and the second segment is the lesion itself. So first let us do the annotation for segment 1. So this segment 1 in our case corresponds to the normal lung, and the color which has been assigned to it is green. So this icon on the left is to show or hide labels. So right now, because we are annotating only segment 1, we can hide the segment 2 label and just look at segment 1. So the first thing we need to do is to do a general survey of the particular volume to check for the consolidation and ground glassing, where in which lobes it is present before annotating, so that we have a gross overview. So we can look at all three views to get a better picture. We can essentially choose the slice with the most amount of lesions, so that when we apply certain like filtering settings, it is clear what we are delineating across. After the general survey is complete, we begin our annotation process. So after adding two segments, segment 1 and segment 2, we start annotation with segment 1. So we can click on threshold for this particular task. Threshold is a way in which you can essentially narrow down the filter settings. I mean, like to essentially match what you want to label. So as you increase and decrease the different ranges of Hounsfield units, the view here will modify accordingly. So what we need to do is to essentially narrow it down so that the lung itself gets delineated from the surrounding chest wall, and you don't need to worry about the mask being present outside of the body cavity. I mean, we have a technique to choose only the largest island. So first let us make sure that we have a mask which delineates properly between the lung and the surrounding chest wall, and also the other structures in the chest. So in this case, we have chosen a threshold range from -1000 to -60. One thing to be careful about is is in the presence of consolidation, you will have high Hounsfield units. So during the first pass, we can actually include the consolidation in the segment 1 as well, because as we annotate segment 2, the segment 1 gets overwritten. So once we complete the marking for segment 1, we will go to segment 2 and start annotating the lesions. So at that time the segment 2, whatever we annotate, will overwrite segment 1. So segment 1 will still correspond to the normal lung, which excluding the lesions, so you don't need to worry about that right now. So for segment 1, how we are going to do is through this threshold technique. So right now this -1000 to -60 seems to be working fine. So let's just use these settings and click on. So this is a scrollable panel, so you can scroll down and click on apply. There are two options in this threshold. One is used for masking and one is apply. For this particular case, let's click on apply and see what happens. So the I mean, as you can see, everything is green, as in green corresponding to the color of the segment which we are annotating. So what we need to do right now is use a tool called as islands. So islands is essentially to keep one connected structure in the mask. So in this case, let us select keep selected island and then click on the lung. So it seems to have not worked, so we need to adjust the threshold further. I mean, essentially what has happened is it has not delineated properly, so it is still connected to other tissues which are surrounding it. So in that case we need to adjust the threshold even further to narrow down. So can you see here the yeah, so this, it was somewhere around -1050 last time, so let's try a threshold of uh, -950 to maybe -100 in this case, to see if this delineates the lung from the surrounding tissues properly. So yeah, so let's click on apply now and then again select island, keep the selected island. So let's try one more time. Okay, the upper end seems to be the issue over here. So I mean, right now it's 171, and I think we can even go a little lower. So let's keep it from -1000 to -171. Even if we miss a couple of consolidation lesions, we can actually essentially include it in segment 2. So in this case, -1000 to -171. So let's click on apply and then again let's choose islands and click on keep selected islands. Yeah, right now if you see, the lung has been delineated properly. So this corresponds to segment 1. So how you can see if it has been marked properly or not is by essentially showing a 3D rendering of this. So if you click on show 3D over here, it actually creates a 3D rendering. So you can essentially zoom out from this 3D view and middle click to move. So when you're so here you can see the 3D volume, it has been marked properly. So this essentially concludes the annotation for segment 1. Okay, now that segment 1's annotation is complete, let us begin annotating for segment 2, which corresponds in our case to lesions. So first we can hide the segment 1 by clicking on the eye icon right next to the green color label. So then we have to click on segment 2 to start annotating the lesions. So once we are able to locate a slice with many lesions like this one, we can essentially use the same threshold technique. In this case we are not yeah, so again we modify the lower and upper end of the threshold which we are applying to essentially narrow down where the lesions are. So in this case you can zoom in using the control with mouse scroll, and also you can use the shift with mouse hover to, you can essentially press and hold shift and move the mouse to move across all the views. As in, if you can see here, as I am moving right and left, you can see the sagittal section sort of moving in the same as we move here. So yeah, so now you're seeing the axial section move as I'm moving the cursor in the coronal view. And this is essentially to get a coordination between different 3D views. So one is control with mouse wheel up and down to zoom in and zoom out. Other is shift, hold shift, and just move in any view to essentially move in the other slices as well, the other views as well. So yeah, so let us first pick a view with maximum lesions. So in this one we can essentially choose the same threshold technique, and here uh, so the lesions seem to be over here, and we need to go to the threshold to ensure that if you see here, all the unnecessary things are also marked, so we need to narrow it even if they're marked, it's okay. Like in this case we are not going to click on apply directly, but we are going to select use for masking. What use for masking means is that we essentially narrowed down the threshold values, so now we have to select which regions to apply. So unlike last time where we applied it for the entire volume and we chose which islands are important for us, in this case we are using it for masking, meaning we need to sort of paint which are the lesions. So once we select apply use for masking, we need to click on sphere brush. So sphere brush is used to annotating a 3D volume. So if you don't select sphere brush, only a 2D slice will be annotated. So we need to select sphere brush and then go on clicking on these lesions. So if you can see, we just selected the overall general region, but because we have narrowed down a certain editable threshold intensity, it is marking only in that particular threshold. So you need to essentially hide and see if the marking is correct. If it is, so in this case it is a little bit I would say little bit overboard, meaning like the lower end of the intensity range is it seems to be over marking. So let us maybe, yeah, maybe this is fine. maybe around 600 is fine. So in this case, for the lesions, we're using the editable range as -600 to -160 for the ground glassing which is present over here. So again, you click on use for masking, and then to remove this, you use the erase tool over here, and you erase this whole marking which is done. So, or you press undo. So undo, you can undo the yeah. So now we again start uh, painting the lesions. So because we need, I mean, it was an erase, so we need to click on paint, and then okay, you see over here that because there is consolidation somewhere, and the editable range which we have selected is not marking that part, we need to again modify it. So again, go to threshold and make sure that that gets included. So right now it is -600 to +40, and you click on use for masking, not apply. If you click on apply, it will apply to the whole volume, and we do not need that. So now that one particular lesion has been marked, you go ahead and do the same for all the lesions which are present in the volume. So there's a lesion over here. You need to be careful with lesions which are closer to the chest wall, because you don't essentially need the chest wall to be marked. So if you want the view from other sections also, like I told you before, you need to press on shift. So here you can see some again lesions. You can start marking them. So you need to keep adjusting the threshold to make sure that you mark the lesions which you want to mark. So essentially you keep going to the threshold menu and changing the threshold as you see fit, so that you get to mark all the lesions properly. So this is how you so yeah, you again click use for masking, and once this is done, what you need to do is you need to again scroll up. So we are in the segment editor now. Click on this arrow right next to segmentations and click on export files, and then you choose the destination folder, and then you click on export. This step is important because this is how you essentially save the particular annotation to the memory. If you don't do this step, whatever you have marked is lost. So you make sure that you go to this arrow right next to segmentations and click on export files, and then export that particular file to a destination folder. Thank you.